Welcome back to a new Hack My Home video. Today we will talk about how to build and add a radar-type presence sensor. This video is part of the series related to presence management and extends its functionalities. If you missed the previous episodes, you can find them on our Hack My Home channel. We immediately answer the first question. Why use a radar-type presence sensor? These types of sensors are capable of detecting actual presence, not just movement. It also works in complete darkness. By not using infrared, it is not subject to interference from light, shadows, or reflections. Stable and precise coverage, up to 6 meters. Sensitivity, thresholds, distance, and retention time are all configurable parameters. Very low power consumption and integration with ESP Home and Home Assistant. Let's now take a closer look at the module we will use. The LD2420. It is incredible how compact it is, just 2 centimeters by 2, but inside it has everything needed for extremely precise detection. The radar operates at 24 GHz with FMCW technology, which allows it to distinguish both obvious movements and micro movements, such as breathing. And this is precisely what makes it so reliable in presence automation. Its small size makes it perfect for installation in boxes, small panels, or small containers. On the connection front, everything is very simple. We find the pins for power supply, digital output, and especially the UART port, which allows us to configure and read it directly from ESP Home without additional firmware.
Let's now move on to the wiring diagram, which is actually much simpler than it may seem. We use the same ESP32C Mini on which we installed the BLE proxy and the beacon receiver. The LD2420 module interfaces with the ESP32 via the UART port, so we only need 4 wires: power, ground, and the TX-RX pair. The 3.3 volt pin of the sensor should be connected to the 3.3 volt pin of the ESP32, while the GND should obviously be connected to the common ground. For communication, the OT1 pin of the LD must be connected to the RX of the ESP32, while the sensor's RX goes to the TX of the ESP32. This is a standard cross-connection, as with all UART modules. If you also need an immediate digital signal, you can use the OT2 pin, which provides a presence yes-no output, and connect it to the digital pin D3. This is optional, but it can be useful in scenarios where you want an instant response. Once these pins are connected, the sensor is ready to be configured in ESP Home and start transmitting all data. Attention! The LD module has 2 firmware versions that change the function of pins OT1 and OT2. In the newer versions, OT1 is the TX pin for UART communication, while OT2 becomes the digital presence output. In previous versions, instead, OT2 is the TX pin for UART communication, while OT1 becomes the digital presence output. This means that to connect it correctly to the ESP32, we must always check the version to avoid reversing the TX and presence connections. Let's start with the components needed for building the radar sensor. We will use the same ESP32C Mini that we used in previous episodes. Then we need the LD2420 radar sensor and 5 copper wires of different colors. We insert the 5 colored wires into the radar sensor connector, following the electrical diagram we saw earlier. The red into the 3.3 volt pin, the black into the ground pin, the blue into the OT1 pin, the yellow into the RX pin, and finally the purple into the OT2 pin. We connect the wires to the ESP32, always following the order of the electrical diagram: the red to pin 3.3 volts, the black to the ground pin, the blue to GPIO21RX, the yellow to GPIO20TX, and finally the purple to GPIO05. And here is the completed sensor. The next step is to configure it in ESP Home. During the final test, I realized that the ESP32C Mini we are using does not support UART connection. So in the final sensor, I removed the TX and RX connections, yellow wire and blue wire. For the purpose of functioning as a presence sensor, this limitation has no impact. The only thing we cannot do is modify its operational settings, but the default settings are more than adequate for normal use. In ESP Home, we configure a simple binary GPIO sensor on pin 05. The delayed on parameter filters false positives, while delayed off maintains the present state active for 2 seconds after the radar stops detecting activity. This solution is extremely stable on ESP32C3, and with this, we have completed the construction of the radar sensor and configured it using ESP Home.
Once the sensor is linked to Home Assistant, a new entity will be available within the BLE scanner called Radar Presence. This sensor represents the status of the radar module we have just built and reliably indicates whether someone is present in the room. Unlike the beacon scanner, the radar cannot identify who is in the environment, but it provides a fundamental and very precise piece of information: the actual presence of a person in the room, regardless of movement or the device they carry. Now that we have both the presence radar and BLE beacons, we can finally take a leap forward. By using this information together, we can create a room occupancy widget that represents the real state of the environment, not just an estimate. The concept is very simple. The radar tells us if someone is in the room, while the BLE beacons allow us to understand who is present. In the widget, the radar has priority. If it detects presence, the room is considered occupied, even if no beacon is visible at that moment. When one or more beacons indicate who is in the room, the widget clearly shows who is present, with the respective icons. This way, we obtain a much more reliable representation of actual occupancy, perfect for managing lights, climate, and advanced automations. The link to the code to add the occupancy widget can be found in the video description.
I am Orion, and this is Hack My Home. If this video was helpful to you, well, now it's your turn. Leave a nice like. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to bring you more detailed and quality content. Share it with those who, like us, love tinkering with Home Assistant, or with those thinking of starting. It might be the perfect video to take the next step. And tell me in the comments, which feature are you most eager to try? I really enjoy reading your ideas, and often the best insights come directly from your questions. Oh, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you won't miss the upcoming videos, guides, and all the experiments we'll explore together.